Welcome back, everyone, for the power transformer checkout video. And before we get started, I want everyone to see what I've got here. I've got a few things I put together and got ready and did my little homework, as I say. You always have to do your homework on just about everything on these radios. This is an RCA receiving tube manual, as you can see, and this is the RC14 series. I think it was Kurt Reed on the Antique Radio Forum. He's the one that recommended years ago that I go out and buy one of these, which I did, and he also recommended that the RC14 was a good one, so I went ahead and found it. I think it cost me $5 or something like that, $6 on eBay. Good thing to have. It's a fairly thick manual. It's got all kinds of tubes in it, all kinds of, the current draws and the voltages, the filament voltages, plate voltages, all kinds of stuff in there. What kind of tube it is, all numerically listed. It's come in handy a lot of times, and I'm going to need it in order to check out this power transformer, and you'll see why here in a second. All the leads coming out of the transformer have been taped off. The ends have been taped off, the green and the red, and I have them taped, those leads taped off for safety purposes. Now the black leads I have connected to a power cord. This power cord right here, and I've got the power cord connected into my wall outlet that will be controlled by my Variac. And the black now up here, if you'll recall, the original primary leads on this transformer were brown. I changed them to black. I didn't want brown on one side and brown on the other. These two leads right here are brown. I didn't like that idea, so I changed them to black. And that's what I have the power cord connected to, the two black wires. Okay, don't take any chances when you're checking out a power transformer. Remember, the voltages coming out of this winding right here, going to the plate on your rectifier tube, are going to be pretty high. You're talking 300 volts or more. So be careful. Be very careful. Now these other leads, the voltages are low. They're much lower because they feed the filament or the heaters, and they also feed the heater. This brown set right here feeds the heater on the rectifier tube. But these others, this is a pretty high voltage. It'll kind of knock you around a little bit. So be careful. If you don't know how to do this stuff, don't do it. Find somebody to help you, or find someone else to do it for you. So what we're doing, for those of you who have not been watching this series or just now tuning in, is we're going to test this thing out. We're going to apply voltage to this power transformer to see if it's operational before I put it back on the chassis. Now, new wires have been installed, it's been cleaned, it's been painted, it's good to go. But we have to do the voltage checkout. Now, this thing obviously is not connected to anything other than my multimeter. Therefore, there's really no load being applied to this power transformer. And when you have no load, to pull voltages down, that means you're going to have higher voltage readings than you would normally have. Okay? So we will get higher voltage readings, but once they're hooked up to the chassis, the load will pull them down into the, the area that they're supposed to be. Now this is an 80, so most people would say, well, the first number on the tube is the heater voltage, so that should be 8 volts if it's an 80. And of course, the 2A5 would be 2 volts, 2A6 2 volts, 58 tube would be 5 volts, and the 2A7 would be 2 volts. That would be the heater voltage. But is that true? Well, I don't know. Let us find out. Let us go to our neato tube manual. Let's look up the 80 and see what we get. Now, according to the tube manual, there it is, about the 80 rectifier tube right there. All it really says there is that this is the same as a 5Y3G. Well, that doesn't help us very much. Then after the 80, it moves down to the 81. Well, that doesn't tell us anything. So let's go to the 5Y3 and see what that tells us. If it's the same, let me see now, 8 and 5. Well, that's interesting. So let's go over here. Alright, here's the 5Y3G right here. Alright, now we look down and we see that where is it? Filament voltage AC. 5 volts. There it is right there, the top line, right underneath the word characteristics. 5 volts on the heater for the 5Y3, which is the same as the 80. Well, son of a gun. That means that the 80 does not mean 8 volts for the heater. We now know by looking at our tube manual that it's actually 5 volts. How about that? So let's go ahead and turn it on, crank up the voltage to about 117 volts on our primary. It says right there, I think that's 117. It's very difficult to read that right there. Let's see if we can get around 5 volts there instead of the 8. Interesting, huh? Alright, we're looking for 5 volts. So let's go ahead and turn on our isolation transformer, turn on our variac. Now I'm going to bring this up here to about 117 volts. I'm going to crank up the voltage with my little variac here. I'm going to crank it on up. And we're looking for 5 volts. How are we doing so far? 2.5. Not bad, not bad. Let's get it on up there. We're up to 3.4. I've got it on the AC range, by the way. And the scale I'm using is the 20 volt range. I'm on the 20 volt range AC voltage right here. Okay. Let's bring it on up. We're at 90. 100. 4.75. Remember, we're looking for 5 volts. There's 115, 16, about 117 right there. You know, that's not a calibrated gauge. Keep that in mind. There it is. 5.0302. Not too shabby. So that means that the voltage coming out of this winding being supplied to this 5 volt heater of the 80 is 5.03. That's good. That's very good. Alright, now let's go ahead and come down here. We'll go ahead and hook up the green wires, which will check out all the heaters for these 4 tubes. But you'll notice that again, the 58 tube has a 5 in the beginning. So that means, you know, most of us automatically we go to that knee-jerk reaction, which I am guilty of myself. Brendan up in Detroit will verify that. This is 2 volts, 2 volts, 2 volts. Is this actually a 5 volt heater on the 58 tube? Let's find out. I have disconnected the multimeter leads from the 2 brown wires right here and taped them off. This one and this one here. They're now taped off and isolated from the rest, and I've reconnected my multimeter to the 2 red leads. Now again, I'm going to stress, if you don't know how to do this, be careful. Okay, find someone that can help you, or really study and get really confident in your ability to follow safety when doing this. Do a lot of reading. Every one of us that work on these high voltage deals, these old radios, these old televisions, you have to read all the time. You have to read. You just can't jump in there and do it. You know, you'll get a nice shock if you're not careful. All right, now we're now hooked to the red leads. Now the red leads are these 2 at the bottom that run over here, as I said, to the filaments or the heaters. There is a difference between a filament and a heater. Look it up if you don't know what it is. This one has a 5, should be 5 volt heater. Well, let's find out. You know, we've got all 2 volts here except for that one. Let's find out what the heater voltage is on a 58 tube. And again, we go back to our little manual here. Now the 58 tube is down there, and it says, look at that top line right there. Heater voltage AC or DC, 2.5 volts on the 58 tube. Well, now who'd have thunk it? Once again, that first number did not designate the heater voltage, just like on the 80. The 80 was 5, the 58 is 2.5. And the rest of these tubes, let's see what I think the 2A5, 2A6, and 2A7 are all 2.5 also. Let's check one of them. Alright, let's take a look at this 2A5. Now, if we look underneath where it says power amplifier pentode, we count down 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 5th line, it says, except for its heater rating of 2.5 volts, the 2A5 has electrical characteristics identical with those of the 6F6. So there you have it. 2.5 volts on the 2A5. And it'll be the same with the rest of the tubes. Alright, again, we put our isolation transformer on. The variac is on. We're going to go ahead and start bringing up the voltage here. Let's see what we're getting. We're up to 1.75. We're up to 2.4. Remember, we're going to get a little bit higher voltage ratings because there's no load on this transformer. I'm going to go up here. We're up at 2.6. We're up to 115, 16, 17, right about there. Look at there. 2.9 volts. It's supposed to be 2.5, 2.9 is perfect with no load. Okay? Now that part is done. Now we have to do the high voltage winding. All the wires have been taped off with the exception of the 2 green ones, and those are your 2 high voltage wires. This one to this plate, and this one to that plate. Now we need to find out what the voltage rating is supposed to be on each plate of the 80 rectifier tube. So let's go over here. And remember, the 80 rectifier tube just had a little blurb that said it's the same as the 5Y3, so we had to go to that page. So we'll go back to the 5Y3. Let's see what it has to say. Let me see. It says 1, 2, the third line down underneath as full wave rectifier. It says typical operation with a condenser input filter. AC plate voltage per plate. 350 volts maximum. 350 volts maximum per plate. So we have 2 plates, right? Yes, we do. We have, let me see, we have that one right there, that one right there. So 350 times 2 would be 700. We need 700 volts to come out of this transformer. So let's see if we're going to get it. I've got my multimeter set up on 700 volts. Now, you remember what I told you about high voltage? You got to be very, very careful. Now, we've already ohmed this thing out from ground to each side, and we know that the continuity is good, and there's no shorting anywhere. So let's go ahead and power it up. 350 plus 350 is around 700. That's what this little baby should be putting out. Here we go. Let's crank her up. Got to be careful with this high voltage. Be very careful with the high voltage. Look at that. We're already up to 278 volts. Let's go all the way up to 60, 70, 80 volts. We're at 506. Let's go up to 100 volts. We're at 627. We're almost there, folks. 110. 685. Remember, we're looking for around 700. Actually, if that's all we ever got out of it, that would be plenty, actually, right now. So let's see. Let's go up to 117 or thereabouts. About right there. 724 volts. It don't get any better, okay? So let's crank it on down. I don't want to keep it there very long. All right. Turn everything off. I declare this power transformer good. Happy days